This weekend's standout fixture in Europe comes at the Wanda Metropolitano in the shape of a top-of-the-table clash that just happens to be the Madrid derby, maybe the most competitive derby in Spain at this precise moment in time. Hi all, here we go with another big weekend of club football, and although we're going to be focusing on the Premier League as usual later, my focus at the start of tonight's show is going to be on Spain and La Liga, which stages that potentially spectacular derby. Not least because it features teams with firepower and no shortage of potential for a flare-up. And this at a time when we're perhaps witnessing the closing chapters of one of the great sagas in modern football. Meanwhile, in England, the Premier League weekend offers plenty of value at the bottom as well as the top. And joining me from England is our European football expert, Andy Brassel. And in case you doubted in any way that he is a European football expert, I can tell you he's been jetting about the continent this week. Where have you been? What were you up to, Andy?
Well, I went for a first-hand look at Antonio Conte's Inter. Of course, they've now won 5 out of 5 after beating Lazio on Wednesday night, a game that I was at. And already they've got huge hallmarks of a Conte side. So they're going to be tough to beat. And Juventus have got genuine competition this year.
Yeah, I look forward to talking to you about that very, very soon. But it's Spanish football that's on the agenda tonight. Let's take a little look at what we've got coming along this weekend in terms of the fixtures. It's been a fantastic start to the season. And at the top of the table, there's some real drama going on here. But I'd like to point out Barcelona travelling to Getafe. They've only taken 1 point from their 3 away games this season, winless in their last 7 away from home in this competition. So nothing can be taken for granted. They're conquered by Granada, of course, last time out. Atletico take on Real Madrid, though, in the game that really is the focus of our attention in a compelling round of matches in Spain. Let's have a look at the top of the table and point out that there are so many great stories here. Look at Real Sociedad, for example, with Martin Odegaard of Real Madrid, but loaned to them. Absolutely tearing it up this season. Stunning performances for him as they find themselves there on 13 points with Atletico, with Real just that 1 point in front. And of course, Barcelona down there with Sevilla languishing a few points behind. Okay, let's get straight into this one by looking back to what we saw in terms of midweek action, which sets us up for where we are right now. It was this. Leaders with samba, because it was a 19-year-old and an 18-year-old Brazilian, Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo, who were the superstars for Real Madrid last time out. And anything they could do, well, Atletico were looking to keep pace with as best they could as well. As far as the headline relating to Atletico in midweek is concerned, there we are. There they are, Atletico, there we are, back to reality, back to life once again. But unfortunately, Morata getting himself suspended after that set to Mallorca. Right, let's talk a bit about what we've seen from them so far, Andy. Let's start off with Real Madrid. Rodrigo, the touch, the finish, sublime. They've found something there, haven't they, in their young Brazilians?
Yeah, they have, John, and that touch, I suspect he could live off that for a very long time. What really struck me about that is just as he was about to come on, seeing Zinedine Zidane hold him close and speak to him quite extensively about what he wanted him to do. And that I thought was fantastic, because a big question mark over Zinedine Zidane so far in his second spell at Real Madrid has been his ability to bring these young players through, bring new players through, refresh the team. And that's what he's starting to do at last. I mean, if you look at some of these results, I think some of those results, the performances were even weaker than the results suggest against Valladolid, Villarreal and Levante. And Paris Saint-Germain, the performance there speaks for itself. But that win at Sevilla, a place where they never win at No Rion. It's very difficult for any team. That could be a turning point for them, because that was a really solid team performance.
Let's have a look at Atletico so far. Okay, so they got the job done in week. The frustration for them in midweek was with that sending off for his second yellow there for Morata. It meant that having got the trident out, having got Costa, Joao Felix, their expensive summer signing, and him out, they're now going to be deprived of those services. For them, it was really a question of that defeat to Sociedad, subsequently a couple of draws, Andy. What have you made of their start to the season?
Yeah, and as you pointed out, John, Real Sociedad have been absolutely fantastic. Probably the most compelling side to watch in La Liga so far this season. So we'll see how far they can go. But with Atletico, I think the points tally is pretty decent so far, given that there's been such profound change in that team, such an incredible turnover of players. And the win at Mallorca on Wednesday, as you said, was exactly what they need. But it's a sense of, I imagine, enormous frustration for Simeone that he's not been able to have Diego Costa, Joao Felix and Morata on the pitch together for one single minute in La Liga. And as you say, he was saving Morata for this weekend so he could play the three of them together like he did in the International Champions Trophy, which really put the wind up Real Madrid and profoundly shocked them, even though it was only a friendly. And now he's not going to be able to do that. It's going to have to be Costa and Joao Felix who do it on their own.
Absolutely. Let's have a quick look at Madrid in a bit more detail now. Let's talk about signings as we go into this one, because we have to really forecast what's going to happen in the league this season. Of those signings, we've spoken about one or two. I'm really interested in talking about Luka Jovic in just a moment, Andy, because my opinion is that he's just not quite on target. The other night he was firing them just wide. We'll talk about Eden Hazard in just a moment as well. But obviously Rodrigo was the one who, in a way, has kind of supplanted them, hasn't he? Because the youngsters have come through, and as you can see with this one, the fastest scorer is first La Liga goal for Real Madrid since the great Ronaldo back in 2002. But let's go back to Jovic, shall we? Because he was the one that you thought was always going to be under pressure, and it's turned out to be that way, isn't it, Andy?
Yes, it has. And of course, there was so much talk about him being loaned out before the start of the season, which would have been a real shock after they spent that much money to get him. But this is a guy who's a natural finisher. So I think that he's getting in the positions, and he had one of those goals ruled out by a toenail of offside, as we talk about it nowadays, against Osasuna. He's getting himself in the right spots. He will score goals. I think the real question is, how can he click with Karim Benzema? Because of course Benzema supplied so many of Cristiano Ronaldo's goals. Can he do the same for Jovic, who's such a natural finisher?
Eden Hazard, obviously a belated start for him. A lot of talk about his preparedness for the season and what have you. Pressure on him, undoubtedly.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's what he wanted. And I think you've seen in these early games where he's just getting himself up to fitness, having missed a chunk of pre-season, having missed the start of this season. He's already proving to become influential. I thought even in the match against Paris Saint-Germain, where he was largely panned for his performance, as were the rest of the team, he started quite well. You could see the beginnings of a link with Ferland Mendy, with him drifting inside and allowing Mendy the ability to charge outside, making those runs up the touchline like he likes to do. Hazard's settling in. He's making his place in the team. And of course, wouldn't it be a fantastic moment for him to really make his presence felt if it were to be in the Madrid derby?
Now, I think we've already spoken about Joao Felix, so let's not go into any detail there. What I really want to do is talk about this game itself. I want to talk about this Madrid derby, what it is, what it has been, and what it is now that Diego Simeone is stamping his mark on this one. Because we talk about the Clásico year in, year out, don't we? But this one, whether it be Champions League finals, other major European clashes, whether it be games now that are really going to be deciding the destination of the La Liga title, this is a derby that has so much about it. Obviously, Real, Andy, have the better record. Obviously, it's only lately that we've seen Diego Simeone getting it together. But 9 wins in 29. If he makes it 10 in 30, that will make him the most successful manager in this competition here. And clearly, as you can see, only 2 wins for Real in the last 15 domestic meetings, albeit with 8 draws. This is a highly competitive fixture. Now, what happens this weekend?
I think it is highly competitive, John, but I think we really do have to break down those numbers, because why it's talked about less than other big games in Europe, I think, is because people find it so difficult to read. I mean, we talked about those 8 draws in the last 15. There's 4 in the last 6 as well, the other two of which have been won by Real Madrid. So we think typically the fact that Real Madrid have a problem facing Atletico under Simeone. But in fact, I would say Simeone has a problem against Zidane, because since Zidane lost his first home game back in March 2016 against Atletico Madrid and started questioning himself, wondering if he was openly whether he was going to be sacked on the Monday, Atletico Madrid haven't beaten Real Madrid in the league. These tend to be very, very tight games indeed, and there's no reason really to suppose why this one will be any different.
Absolutely. All right, let's get some feedback from the viewers on this one. Ojo's been saying, with Barcelona away from form poor, even a draw between Real and Atletico could catapult Sociedad to the top of the table. Yep, that's right. However, what I see is that Dan would like to go all out to break that Atletico defence, and either of Vinicius and Rodrigo could be thrown in later on in the game. Yeah, license to kill and all that. Imran says Atletico Madrid can put a marker down in the title race with a win against their arch rival Real Madrid. It's been a while since Atletico was stronger than them. Battle of the teenage stars. Indeed, so much to be excited about, and that's why we're talking about this one. When we come back, a couple of guys who, when they were playing together in Spain, were pretty good, you know. One's still there, one isn't. Yeah, we're talking Messi and Ronaldo next. Welcome back to the show. We're talking La Liga by and large tonight, and the Spanish theme continues with the news that you might have noticed earlier on this week. Lionel Messi's name appeared on the right number of forms for him to be named the best player in the world by FIFA there. Messi and La Liga, the best according to us there. Now, let's have a little look at what happened on Instagram. If I was about 40 years younger, and if I did this show from my bedroom somewhere, and if I had like the name Ronaldo in my Twitter handle, I might cover it like this. I might say, look, he doesn't care. He's trolling them. He's not involved in this one because he's the GOAT. No, but I'm not going to do that. We're not going to have that conversation right now. Instead, what we are going to do with Andy Brassel, our European football expert, is we're going to react to something I saw tweeted out on social media anyway by ESPN the other day. I found this one really compelling here. And this was something that everyone's been talking about lately. Cristiano Ronaldo's missing more games than he ever did in his career. Messi's picking up injuries. He's done that just now, obviously. Ladies and gentlemen, it's slowly coming to an end. Stop the bickering, stop the debates. Let's just enjoy the final years. Here. And that really is something that we need to be talking about, because this is something we're going to have to suddenly get used to. When something happens to Messi, everyone stops, not only on the field but in the stands as well. He was injured, of course, now that he is actually back and playing football. So, as I said, Andy Brassel, European expert, is with me here. Listen, I'm not being too rude to our younger viewers. I'm just suggesting that I've never liked the comparative thing. I've always revelled in the quality of these footballers. But the reality now is maybe with 134 and 132, things are going to slow down. They are going to miss more games, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think we have to look at already how much they've done to extend their careers. Ronaldo, in the way that he's changed his game, he does very little running off the ball now. He's muscled up and is a penalty box player, a bit like a supercharged version of Alan Shearer and what he became in the end of his career in a certain way. And really, when Barcelona were questioned for spending so much money on Luis Suarez and Neymar, they were buying players who could do the running for Messi, so he could drop deeper, so he could pick his moments to burst from the centre circle to the penalty spot. So a huge part of the credit for the fact that they're still going actually has to go to them, and to a lesser extent to their clubs as well. I mean, what Barcelona have done in bringing in Griezmann, that's something that I think draws attention to the fact that Barcelona still need that kind of player who can take the physical load off Messi. But these are players who have never liked being rotated. Now, Ronaldo seems to be at peace with that. I'm not quite sure if Messi is yet.
Let's have a little look at a headline that caught my eye here, and this was interesting. 79 days away from the group, outside of the group, inevitably has become a factor for Messi. You know, extended absence, injury. He just was a guy who didn't pick up injuries, and people are now looking at Valverde's methods and saying, oh, well, you know, maybe it's the diet, maybe they're not getting things right here. They're humans. They've played an awful lot of football. They play an intense, top-level elite football here. You know, announcement about Ronaldo being injured. This is the way any coverage of these guys is handled these days. But we should, as I've stressed, really get serious about this one. Let's have a look at their career stats, because it's worth bearing in mind that the amount that they have achieved, and again, this is not comparative, it's just to point out the sheer volume of work that they've got through is, I think, Andy, going to be a massive factor in deciding what happens. What we don't want to happen is them to stop, because these numbers are simply staggering, aren't they? Now, if they do keep going a little bit longer, they're going to be setting marks that are never really going to be matched, aren't they?
Yeah, I think that's probably the case, John. And I think in a way, we will only truly appreciate both of them for what they are when they're retired. I think you need that historical perspective. And they'll leave a hole when they've gone. I think you could argue, certainly in terms of competitiveness, that has already been a hole for Real Madrid. It's not just the goals, it's the desire to win to celebrate every goal like it's a winning goal in a European Cup final. But these players, and you look at Messi, still have big desires. He's made clear at the start of this season that his big desire is for Barcelona to go big and win the Champions League again. You look at Portugal and Ronaldo. I think the big thing for him is not just winning the Champions League with Juventus. I think it's breaking that 100 goal mark at international level. So they've still got big aims despite the fact they've achieved so much. So I still think there is a little bit left in the tank, at least, for both of these.
Oh, let's hope so. Let's hope they continue doing amazing things. All right, well, it's good to have that chat, and it's always good to get your comments in. So keep them coming in. This is a debate we're going to continue all the way through this season as we enjoy their talents. Now, Premier League up next when I come back. A weekend watch for you, a look at the big stories, and of course, these danger men will be back in action. Liverpool fans, listen up. It's time to stand red with Standard Chartered. This new app unifies Liverpool fans all over the world. Join the build-up to every Premier League match day with the Reds. You can get call-ups from Jurgen Klopp's boys, touch the This Is Anfield sign, and even create your own animation that comes to life by scanning your official home shirt. So what are you waiting for? Download the free Standard Chartered Stand Red app via the Apple App Store or Google Play Store right now. And if you are a Liverpool fan, you'll know that another win this weekend will edge you ever closer to a Premier League record. Let's run the numbers, shall we, as far as their excellent winning run is concerned. It stands at 15 right now. The Premier League record is Manchester City's 18-game run. Now, Liverpool have already set a new mark in that they've become the first team to win the first 6 games in successive seasons. What about their chances this weekend? Well, you'll fancy them because they've won their last 12 matches against promoted sides, and you'd also fancy that formidable front three to contribute. 64% of their goals in this 15-game winning run have come from those guys. OK, so that's where we start this weekend with Liverpool's trip to Bramall Lane to take on Sheffield United. You know, I'll give you a stat, as always, on each one of these games in my weekend Just One Thing feature, which you can find elsewhere on our Facebook page. I'll also zoom in on 4 games in just a moment in a weekend watch in some detail. So it starts there, it finishes on Monday night in Manchester, and I think it's fair to say right now that this is beginning to take a very interesting shape in terms of the league table. Are we still going to see Leicester challenging? Are we going to see some maybe surprising names continuing to occupy this part of the table? And are we going to see some of these clubs that were certainly fancied in Wolves' case getting a little bit more upwardly mobile? We'll find out soon enough. Just a couple of the headlines that have caught the eye over the last day or so ahead of this weekend's matches. Newcastle United, it does begin to look now as if this Peter Kenyon-led bid to buy out Mike Ashley's club has got something to it. The owners of Bordeaux, American money coming in. Keep an eye on this space. It looks as if there's going to be a decision in a week or so on this one here. Elsewhere, we have to keep an eye on one or two of the stories that have affected managers, and in particular Mauricio Pochettino, talking about how unhappy he is. Well, he's up against his former club Southampton this weekend, and he really needs a decent result and some positive headlines. Just one other thing that I'd like to point out: the midweek Carabao Cup action saw the kids play, and it saw the kids play magnificently. Young goal scorers, youthful ambition, and that's really what I always enjoy about this particular competition. Okay, as promised just a moment ago, let's get into 4 games in some detail from this weekend in the Premier League in my Weekend Watch. Well, let's start off then with the champions and their trip to Goodison Park as De Bruyne and company train their sights on Everton after 8 goals last time out. You know, the last time a team had scored this many goals at this stage of a top-flight season was 1955, and City really don't look like slowing down. If they score first, by the way, Everton will struggle to recover, because unfortunately the Toffees have had the worst record since the start of last season when it comes to recouping points in matches when they go behind. I'm also going to focus very much on West Ham, because I think their defence, which has improved, really has. I mean, Issa Diop's been a star so far, and they've looked strong defensively after that dreadful 5-goal drubbing by Manchester City on the opening weekend. But they take on a Bournemouth side this weekend that scored 6 goals in picking up 6 points in their last couple of matches. The 4 previous meetings between these two teams at the Vitality have also yielded 17 goals, 9 of them for Bournemouth. So this has got to be fun, hasn't it? Right, as I mentioned earlier on, Wolves have underperformed. Will they or Watford open up their account for the season? Now, forget games against City, and let's face it, Watford will want to forget that one last week in a hurry. These are the ones right now that matter for Watford. They're strugglers, yes, but they beat Swansea in midweek. They may fancy their chances against Wolves that has failed to click so far this term. So that's a really important game. I'd also look at Aston Villa as well. They need Wesley to score a goal, basically. Their target man rested in midweek. They won the game, and even though they beat Brighton in that Carabao Cup, they still look light on striking options and backup. He's back. His side needs to improve on the goal tally. Only 5 of them they've managed so far this season. Right, that's my Weekend Watch. And Andy's still with me, sat patiently through all of that. I've thrown a lot out there, Andy. Tell me, where does your interest lie? Let's leave Manchester United Arsenal out, because that's a Monday game. But where does your interest lie otherwise in the Premier League this weekend?
I think you've done right, John, to highlight Wolves versus Watford. It's an absolutely huge match for both of those. It's hard to believe, with the quality they've had, with the way they've worked to get into the Europa League, the Wolves are still looking about for a win this season. It doesn't feel like they've played terribly in many of those games, give or take perhaps the Chelsea game. And they've still got that grit that they showed to get that point at Crystal Palace last time out. Watford, I'm a little more concerned for, because not only do they have less points than Wolves, of course, but they're coming off the back of that absolute thrashing at Manchester City. We know Wolves have got the resources in terms of players. They've got quality. They've got experience. But all of that doesn't mean anything until you get the win. So that's what they're going to be going for this weekend. And I think they'll probably just about manage it against Watford.
Yeah, that's the one, isn't it? And I take your point entirely there. That is what has happened for Wolves. I mean, obviously the shocker was Chelsea. I don't think many people saw that coming. But Chelsea might do that to teams this season. What I find interesting is that you worry about Watford, and I share your concerns here. If you look at the games they have to come, well, based on what we've seen so far this season, you don't want to be going to Norwich. I mean, that's some way away. But they've also got Chelsea and Spurs in there, haven't they? Sheffield United have demonstrated they're no mugs this season either. So that might be of some concern. Andy, of the other things I talked about there, Manchester City, Everton have been something of a bogey team for them, but it's hard to see anybody, let alone Everton in their current state, where they haven't been at their best, stopping this juggernaut, is it?
Absolutely. I mean, there were 2 wins for Manchester City in these fixtures last year, 3-1 at the Etihad and 2-0 at Goodison Park. And you can only see the gap becoming larger here. I mean, I can't think of any Premier League coach who's in bigger danger than Marco Silva at the moment, which is obviously very disappointing for him. I think it would be very, very hard if he got sacked on the back of a defeat to Manchester City. But I think the feeling that they wanted to react after the defeat at Norwich just because they've beaten Watford handsomely, I don't think that's subsided yet. They realise that there's still the gap with Liverpool, and they need to keep that gap manageable. So I expect a very, very motivated Manchester City over the next couple of weeks, and it feels like a long time since they couldn't do anything right at Goodison Park.
We've got some almost instantaneous reaction coming in. Jerome Salazar was talking about Wolves, and I can see you picking up on this one, Jerome. I mean, you're saying the new Burnley, and what you mean by that is struggling because of those Europa League commitments, what have you. You think they'll have a struggle surviving, might finish 16th or 17th. I think I'm with Andy. I don't think I worry as much. I think they've got some absolute quality. They've got a really good manager, and I don't think we have to worry too much about them. Things will pick up for them. Let's talk a little bit, shall we, about Bournemouth. I'm really quite excited about the Bournemouth story right now. They've got flair going forward. They've got Brooks to come back into that team. I see good things happening for Bournemouth. Do you, Andy?
I agree with you, John, and they've really changed my mind since the start of the season. I saw them kicking off the season, especially without Brooks, and he was so influential for them last season. I was really concerned for Bournemouth. But then they've gone and dug out some results that you wouldn't expect them to as well. I think especially you look at the win over Everton. It was a really tremendous performance and a really tremendous effort. Callum Wilson is looking back to his absolute best, and Harry Wilson as well. People I don't think had any idea of how good he could be in the Premier League.
All right. Andy, thank you very much. Enjoy your weekend, and always a pleasure talking to you. See you soon.
Thank you.
That's Andy Brassel signing off there. Let's remind you, we've got Fox Sports FC coming along in just a moment with Ed Russell joined by Chevy and PJ. They'll be going in a little bit deeper when it comes to their previews of one or two matches. They'll focus a lot more on the Bundesliga fixtures this weekend.